Okay, let's talk about in this lecture flipping properties. Fix, flip, and get rich quick is what I like to call it. Initially, when I started getting into real estate, I was not that excited about doing flips because my strategy was let me build out a real estate portfolio that I can retire on because I'm an entrepreneur, I'm independent, and I didn't have any type of 401k or anything like that from a 9 to 5 job. So I was like, I'm gonna build out this portfolio to retire on. But as the market started to fluctuate and change, I saw the opportunity to start doing flips, and I got into it. And there are a lot of benefits to doing flips. So let's talk about flipping properties. So flipping is the art of buying distressed properties for low prices, fixing them up, and then selling them for a profit. All right. So there's a lot of TV shows that you might see on HGTV or DIY channel. Like one of my favorites is Flip or Flop. Now, if you watch that show is actually really how it goes down. Like when I would do my flips, it would be just like that, but they don't get into the nitty gritty of the types of things that you have to keep track of and things that you have to be aware of. But essentially, if you watch those shows, that's how flips go down. And so, like when I started doing flips, I started having fun doing the flips. If you watch my YouTube channel, I have a lot of footage from before and after projects that I've done. I even have some before and after values, so like what I purchased the house for, and then what I sold it for. And at the end of this lecture, I'll show you an example of the type of things that you have to be aware of, and we'll kind of go through that. But some of the key points for doing flips would be finding properties at good prices in neighborhoods where there is buyer interest. So because you don't want to plan on doing a flip and then you buy a house because it's cheap and it's in a cheap neighborhood and there's no buyer activity in that neighborhood, and then you get this house for cheap. Let's say you got the house for $25,000, and then you turn around and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna put 10,000 into it. I'm gonna make it nice and enjoy the process, and then you get ready to sell it and there's no buyer interest in that neighborhood. So that's one key thing about doing a flip is you want to make sure you buy a home where after you fix up that home you can actually sell it pretty quickly so that you are carrying it and then going broke paying the mortgage or the loans that you might have on that flip. All right, now if you do get in a situation where you buy something like that with the plan to flip it, you should always have a backup plan that if the numbers don't work out for your flip, where you might lose money, you might want to turn around and just rent that property out. Okay, so always be prepared to do both. Now, that's a theme throughout my course is when you start investing, have like plan, more than one option. Okay, so the second key point for flips would be knowing how to manage contractors and manage your rehab budget. This is pretty critical. For me, a lot of this came easy because I manage budgets for my business. But when we start talking about the specifics of evaluating deals and evaluating flips, and actually, I'm going to give you an example at the end of the story. You'll need to pay attention to some of the things that you have to be aware of when doing a flip, as far as the budget and as far as the contractors. You have to be able to shop around. So you have to know part of the process is finding good people to do the work that you need to get done for good prices. And that's just a matter of shopping around, checking people's reputation out, giving them small projects to see how they do those small projects, and then increasingly giving them more responsibility with your projects. Okay. So you got to know how to do that. Also, you got to know how to manage your timeline and keep expenses low to maximize your profit. So that's part of managing your budget, but also you got to manage your time because the longer it takes you to do a flip, the less profit you're going to have because you're going to have to pay the expenses of your loans typically every month. And if you don't have loans, then you might have to pay your gas, electric, your water, your taxes, and these things that start eating into your profit. So you got to be aware of that and be able to manage that. And then know how to evaluate a deal and then estimate it the after rehab value, the ARV, or adjusted resale value is what they call it sometimes, to basically ensure your profit. So you got to know how to, that like I said, we're going to get into evaluating deals and looking at some deals to be able to determine if they're good flips, good rentals, or both. Hopefully, so you got to be able to know how to do that to be able to successfully do flips. I said frips. All right, so you know, here's some of the pros of doing flips. Me personally, off the top of my head, when we start talking about some of the things I like about doing flips, is flips can be fun. You know, flips. I've done some flips, and I invite my friends in, and I'm able to give them some extra money to help me out. So that helps them. It's kind of like a win-win scenario, and it can be fun. We get in there and we do the flips. We turn on the music in the house. We'll be in there painting and doing drywall repairs and repairing plumbing or whatever we have to do, and it can be fun. Like it's project, but you still got to manage your timeline and manage your budget and all of that good stuff. But that's one of the pros of doing flips. Money could be made relatively fast. So where it might take you a year with a rental property to make $10,000, or a little bit more. Let's say you're making 500 a month in profit on a rental property. It may take you a year to make that return on investment, right? But with a flip, you can make much more than what you might make with the rental in a year. You can in 3 months with the flip, you might make 3 times what you make in a year with the rental. And I've done that before with flips. So it can be sort of that get rich quick part of the equation. Um, and more money can be made faster than in many other strategies. So typically you're going to make more than if you were wholesaling faster than a wholesale deal. You're going to be making more money um, faster than if you were doing an equivalent rental property. Um, and so it can be a good way to make money fast. And like I said earlier, it can be fun, low stress if managed properly. So there's no need to personally show the property to potential tenants. There's no emergency phone calls in the middle of the night from your tenants, like when you're doing buy and holds. So I consider flips low stress. I can't really think of a flip project where I really was stressed out. Now there was a couple of rental rehabs where I was a little bit stressed out. That could have potentially been flips, same scenario where I had some plumbing issues that I didn't expect. But the end of the day, it is what it is. You deal with it because it's business. But flips compared to some of the other options can be relatively low stress. And I don't think flips are that risky if they are managed properly. I haven't lost any money on an intentional flip, and not even close. I made a lot of profit, but when I buy the property, that's going to pretty much determine um, how risky it is because I'm going in there with all of my numbers. I'm going in there with a contingency plan. So if something goes wrong or something I can't see is really messed up, I've got money to fix it and I got people to fix it for good prices. So it's not as risky as you might think if you do it properly. Okay. And like I said earlier, flips can be fun. Now, what are some of the cons for doing flips? So money can be lost if you overpay for a home. All right. So like, let's say, I mean, I think that's obvious, but if you buy $100,000 home that you plan to flip, and you're gonna sell that home for let's say 130,000, but after you get into the rehab, you realize that there's a crack in the foundation and in these repairs, and then there's the plumbing is all messed up underground under the foundation. The plumbing is messed up, and you got to get experts to come in there, and it's going to cost you $15,000, and you could potentially lose money when you go to sell the house, right? So that's one of the cons from doing a flip. But you pretty much, if you're going to do a rental property, you still have the same concern. It'll just eat into your profit more and take you longer to break even if you've got a rental. But in a flip, it could really mess you up, especially if you're using private money or hard money lenders and they expect their money by a certain time. You got to hurry up and get it done, and it costs you more than you expect, and it's going to be expensive as well as far as with your loans. then it could be pretty risky. Um, and another thing about flips, and this to me is the biggest con with flips. So this is my Will Moss's biggest pet peeve or con for doing flips, and that is the taxes. So when you go to flip a property, uh, and then you make, let's say you make 30, 40 grand off of that flip, and then that next year when it comes time to do your taxes and you report that income, you got to pay taxes on that income unless you do what is called a 1031 exchange. So in case you don't know what a 1031 exchange is, let's do a quick search so I can explain to you what a 1031 exchange is. Okay, and it's basically a way for you to um, roll over money and not pay taxes immediately. It's like a deferred tax program. So it's called the IRC Section 1031. It's a properly structured 1031 exchange allows an investor to sell a property and reinvest the proceeds in a new property and defer all capital gains. So all you're doing is deferring the capital gains. A lot of people think it's a way to just never pay taxes, but you're deferring the taxes. And at some point, when you sell a property and you don't want to buy another property, you are going to have to pay taxes on all of that deferred tax money. Okay, so be careful with that. I've never done a 1031 exchange, but I've considered it, and not to say I won't do it in the future, but you just got to know, you got to understand it's deferred taxes, not no taxes. All right, so another con for flips would be budget and expenses need to be monitored carefully to ensure maximum profit. That's obvious. Depending on the market, the time to sell could be longer than expected, raising expenses and stress level. So you got to know your market. You got to know what's going on with the buying activity. You got to know what's going on with the selling activity, which is really the transactions, real estate transactions, buying and selling. And just having a good realtor, being able to do some searches and find out what kind of activity is going on. So usually if you don't see a lot of transactions, you are either in a tight market where nobody wants to sell, or you could be in a tight market where nobody wants to buy. Okay, so you got to know which one it is, because if it's a tight market where nobody wants to buy, then usually the prices are cheaper. It's a good time to buy rentals. If you're in a market where there's not a lot of transactions because nobody wants to sell, and the prices are high, then it could be a good time to flip. So you could find a distressed property that needs to be rehabbed, and then you get on the market, and you're one of the only houses on the market. And that's where you get that multiple offer scenario where everybody's trying to buy the same house, and then you're taking the best offer, and it works to your advantage. Okay. So another con, if you're not very good running business operations, managing costs and contractors, flipping could potentially be very stressful or not profitable for you, because you've got to be on top of all of your numbers and be able to manage that in order to do flips. All right, so the other con about flips is they can be expensive and cash intensive, and I don't think flips are for everyone. Okay, so for me, I like to fund my own deals for the most part. I may get a bank to give me 80% of the money, and then I pull the funds in for 20%. And usually, when I do a deal like that with the bank, it's like a 10-year or 20-year or 15-year loan. And so it's not very stressful. I got time to pay that loan back. But you got to have a lot of money around to be able to handle all of the repairs that need to happen, to be able to pay your monthly costs on that home while you hold it, and then while you sell it. Now, once you sell it, you get your money back, and hopefully with some profit, but it can be cash intensive when you start talking about the repairs. So that is essentially what I wanted to talk about related to flips. But let me show you some of the types of expenses you need to be thinking about, and some of the numbers around a flip. So in this example, If you want to do this, you can go to biggerpockets.com. It's a real estate resource website, and they have a house flipping calculator on their site. And I will put a link to it here in the course description or in the lecture description. But basically, you can put in numbers, and it will give you estimates for, what you can make with your flip, and give you some breakdown on what you'll need to account for. All right. So let's look at this, right? So here at the top, um, we're talking about this house. It's 123 Motivation Drive, 6 bedroom, four bathrooms, and I want to make $100,000 off of this flip. And I believe after repairs on this house, I can sell it for $520,000. So if it needs $20,000 in repairs, which would be my estimate after walking through the house, they're saying my max allowable offer should be 371. So you got to know what you want to, what you're willing to offer on a house. You got to know how much repairs are needed, and then you got to know how much you can get for the house once it is fixed up. And then basically based on those numbers, then you can calculate how much profit you might make based on the offer. All right. So this calculator takes sort of a backwards approach where they ask you how much money you want to make, and then they tell you how much the offer should be. But what I usually do is I don't look at how much I want to make. I look at all of the numbers, like how much are they asking for the house, and then how much can I sell it for. Then if there's a wide margin there, then I start subtracting what the expenses will be on the house to get it fixed up and then to carry it to sell. So now here's some of the things when you're doing a flip. When you walk through the house and you start doing an inspection on the house, and you might just pay to get an inspection done by a good inspector, but typically when I do buy flips, I inspect the homes myself, and I'm just conservative with my numbers. So basically, I overestimate what I would have to pay for things, so that I know, if in worst case scenario, I'm still going to make a profit with whatever my offer is. So things you gotta keep into account, and as part of your calculations, is the purchase price of the house, your closing costs, because that's going to come out of your money, that's going to come out of your profit. Let's see, rehab costs. Now, if I look at this house and I could say that's going to cost me about 20 grand. Now, what makes up that 20 grand? And here's some of the things that you have to look at. Exterior repairs on the home, like roof, concrete, gutters, garage, siding, landscaping, exterior septic tanks, decks, foundation. What kind of repairs do you need on the inside? Do you got a demo? You got to do drywall? You got any plumbing repairs? Sometimes you don't know these things, so you have to put in a number anyway because you don't know. You got to have like a just in case number. So just in case there's some plumbing that I can't see underground that's messed up, let me put in some extra budget to handle that, and then it'll average out. But do you need carpentry work, windows or doors, electrical work, painting? You almost always have to paint. You almost always have to put in new carpet and flooring. Um, Sometimes you got to put in a new furnace or a new AC unit. Your countertops, if you're flipping, you might want to put granite in, or you might want to put new cabinets in. Um, so you gotta when you go to walk through the house, you want to put in all of these different expenses, and then have a total of all of the repairs, right? And then let's see. You also Other expenses that you might have to consider is how much it's going to cost you every month to while you repair this house. So if you got the house and you're going to do a flip for 3 months, then you got to multiply for every month, multiply what you're going to have to pay in your loan fees or interest, or your loan, your mortgage. You got to calculate your utilities like gas, water, and electric. You also got to calculate your taxes, and any expenses related to holding that house on a monthly basis. And then also, how much is it going to cost you when you sell it? Because you might have a realtor, and then you have to pay them, and closing costs to the title company, and like any taxes and that kind of thing that are owed. So you got those expenses as well. And And then with all of those numbers, you can calculate what would the profit be if you purchased the house for a certain amount. So you can use this calculator, but later on in the course and when we start evaluating deals, I'll show you how I do it. I basically use an online tool that I created, or you can use a spreadsheet, and it can be pretty simple. All right, so don't let this scare you away, because you might, if you've never done a flip or you've never done a rehab, you might not have an idea of what different things cost, but we will go over that. All right. But in this lecture, I just wanted to get you guys familiar with what flips are and how flips go down and what some of the pros and cons are. So wake up, we got a lot more to learn. Talk to you in the next lecture.